The amazing digital Circus finale is just a month away, so today I wanted to finally share my thoughts on Jax and Ribbit's relationship. So before we delve into our main topic of the day, let's go over what we actually know about Ribbit so far. Ribbit is a former member of the Circus, one who abstracted similar to the other members. Gooseworks has confirmed on Tumblr that Ribbit goes by she/they pronouns and that they were the last to abstract before Kaufmo. I think it's safe to assume that Ribbit was a part of the Circus alongside Ragatha, Kinger, Jax, and Kaufmo, and that Gangle and Zibble never personally met her. You might be wondering how I came to this conclusion, so allow me to explain. Gooseworks has confirmed that Jax named Gangle when she joined the Circus. In episode 6, Jax stated that he and Gangle have been partners on every adventure since she joined. It's strongly implied that Jax and Ribbit were friends at some point, and given their closeness in this Polaroid, I would assume they were typically partnered up on adventures. The only reason Jax would choose to partner up with Gangle instead would be if Ribbit was already gone, meaning they'd abstracted. Initially, I questioned why Jax didn't then partner up with Kaufmo, who he also seems to be close to, but perhaps Jax's falling out with Ribbit may have caused his friendship with Kaufmo to end as well. But that is a topic for later. Now, Zibble has been confirmed as the most recent member to join the Circus before Pomni, so they wouldn't have known Ribbit either, assuming that I'm correct in my assumption that they abstracted before Gangle joined. Though this doesn't mean that the two of them were unaware of Ribbit entirely, as not only is their door still present in the Circus, but the other members would be able to tell the two of them about her. I think it's fair to assume that sometimes members of the Circus like to reminisce on their time with former members who have already abstracted, especially given that they're close enough to hold funerals for one another, as we saw in episode 2. Anyways, with that information laid out, we really don't know too much about Ribbit yet, but perhaps more will be revealed in the finale. Until then, we'll simply need to see what we can infer about Ribbit and Jax's relationship from Jax's behavior so far. We first see Ribbit in episode 5 during the intermission sequence. Towards the end, Jax can be seen running down a hallway lined with doors, when he suddenly stops in front of Ribbit's, reaching his hand out for a brief moment.
Kane, what are we doing right now?
We're intermissioning!
Why?
While this is technically the first time we see Ribbit, I believe the first time Ribbit is referenced is actually in the previous scene, when everyone is enjoying the stargazing adventure. During this scene, Pomni asks Jax if he has any friends, but Ragatha answers for him.
Do you have any actual friends?
Not anymore.
Jax is visibly upset by this comment, and Ragatha does immediately apologize, but we quickly enter the intermission scene as we discussed before. I do want to clarify that I don't think Ragatha was trying to be cruel to Jax here, but that's something I've already discussed before. Today, we're focusing on Jax and Ribbit's relationship. The next hint about their relationship is in episode 6. After Jax confronts Ragatha in the hallway, he's clearly stuck in his head, lingering on what she said about corrupting Pomni.
I know exactly what you're doing with Pomni, and it'll never work!
Huh?
You know, getting close with Pomni. To corrupt her.
You can see how much this affects him, but of course, as soon as Pomni returns, he puts his mask back up and acts as if nothing is wrong. It isn't until he's left alone in the hallway after being ambushed by Zibble that we can see how Ragatha's comment lingers in his mind. Perhaps Jax is thinking back to when he corrupted Ribbit. But what exactly was their relationship actually like? We know how Ragatha may have viewed it, but what did Ribbit mean to Jax? When we first met Ribbit, I didn't actually know quite what to think of their relationship. Some people assumed that they were friends, others enemies, and I've even seen theories that they're lovers who knew each other in the real world, similar to Kinger and Queenie. The fandom has been all over the place with their thoughts, but I didn't know quite what to think until episode 7 came out. In episode 7, we see Jax struggling with his mental health, following his argument with Pomni. At the start of the episode, we can see that he's distancing himself from the others. While everyone's having a great time at the beach, flaunting their recent character development, Jax is off to the side, alone and unhappy.
Aren't you supposed to be miserable about your ability to choose your own body or something?
I've been starting to think that maybe the ability to change is fine. Not needing to commit to one thing all the time.
How about that?
Jax, annoyed with Zubble's newfound acceptance of their body, returns to his bedroom. There, he lies awake in his bed, alone in the dark, glancing at some Polaroids on the wall. All of them are flipped over, the photographs facing the wall so that Jax can't see them. He flips one over, revealing a photo of Ribbit, Kaufmo, and Jax together, seemingly on an old adventure. The memory is too painful, though, and he rolls the other way, staring at the corner of the other room when, suddenly, a triangle-shaped hole appears in the wall. Now, this shape may be important here. From my research, what I found was that in Buddhism, the triangle is a powerful symbol that represents access to higher knowledge or enlightenment. I feel that this is important because from within this triangle comes Ribbit, or at least Ribbit's hands. There is this ominous vibe as Jax stares in horror at the crack in the wall. Ribbit's hands slowly emerge, and despite his seeming fear and hesitance, his expression eventually softens as he reaches out as well. As he does so, his glove fades away, leaving him completely naked and vulnerable. The two touch, and the screen flashes black and white, and I believe this symbolizes yin and yang, but we'll get into that in a bit. Jax is pulled into a dreamlike state with calming music in the background as he floats through a kaleidoscope-like void. The more time he spends in this void, the more familiar the scenery becomes, with the various shapes surrounding him slowly dawning his friends' faces. Just before he can enter the white light at the end, though, he's awoken by Pomni at his bedroom door, pulling him out of his near abstraction. Pomni being the one to pull Jax out of his abstraction is important because their relationship mirrors what I believe his and Ribbit's might have been like. It's clear that Jax and Ribbit were close friends, but there's one more detail I haven't actually discussed yet. The snow globe in episode 7. In this episode, the members of the circus find themselves on an escape the circus adventure, orchestrated by Kane. At one point in this adventure, they're exploring his office, and inside, he has dozens of snow globes, all portraying the various adventures they've been on over the years. Jax hones in on a specific one though, portraying a snowy environment. As he stares at the snow globe, we hear his thoughts for a moment. They're a bit muddled and difficult to understand, but here's my interpretation of the scene.
Hey, you alright?
I'm great.
It seems to be an argument between Jax and Ribbit that they had on this adventure, but it actually reminds me of another similar scene with Jax.
If I shoot you right now, are we still gonna be friends afterwards?
We were never friends.
What about all that stuff you told me?
Jax had a similar falling out with Pomni following their gunslinging adventure when he realized he was opening up to her and being more vulnerable, sharing his fears and more personal thoughts with her. Pomni and Ribbit seem to have had similar reactions to Jax's outburst, in which he decided they were never truly friends, and this makes me think about how Jax approaches relationships in general. Jax refuses to be vulnerable with others, seeming to view vulnerability as a sign of weakness. This reminds me of how he treats Gangle, something else I've discussed in more detail in the past, but we won't go too in-depth on that today. Jax is shown to believe that he and Gangle are friends in their own weird, twisted way.
Maybe she just doesn't want to hang out with someone who's mean to her all the time.
She likes when I'm mean to her, though.
But Gangle doesn't see it this way.
It's Jax, though. He probably wants revenge, and he's gonna make it painful.
Gangle fears Jax, and with Zubul offering her a way out of that friendship, she has been able to find joy she didn't know she was capable of having. Why does Jax treat Gangle this way, though? It could possibly be due to his own fragile masculinity and issues with being vulnerable with others. Seeing Gangle exhibit such meek characteristics might bring out the worst in him, as he tries to toughen her up through his incessant teasing. Basically, Jax might just be projecting his own issues onto Gangle, and I feel that the relationship that the two of them share is important to consider when discussing what he and Ribbit may have had, as is his relationship with Pomni. Ribbit and Jax were clearly close. I can see them being a duo similar to that of Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. I talked about it in one of my previous videos, but Jax reminds me of Bugs Bunny in so many ways, and I can definitely see him basing his persona in the circus off of Bugs. The way that he has these fun and playful relationships with his friends, but always seems to have a leg up on them, often coming out on top, reminds me of how Jax acts with the members of the circus.
What's your archetype then? The villain?
Listen, I add a key dynamic. I see how far I can push things. I screw with people, and I break the fourth wall. You wanna know why? It's 'cause it's funny. I do everything 'cause it's funny. 'Cause I'm the funny one.
Jax takes clear offense to the idea that he's the villain, as Pomni suggests, quickly correcting her that he's actually the funny one. Though we as the audience can clearly see that he's taking this persona of his way too far, more often being cruel rather than humorous to his fellow cast members. I don't think Jax was always this way though. I believe he and Ribbit may have balanced one another out, keeping each other from crossing the line, that is, up until their fight of course. During the scene in which the two reach out to one another just before Jax abstracts, I mentioned that Ribbit turns white while Jax turns black, and how it reminded me of Yin and Yang, so let's discuss that a bit more thoroughly now. What is Yin and Yang? Well, the idea of Yin and Yang is a Chinese philosophical concept on how opposite forces are interconnected and complementary with one another. They are not completely different from each other though, each containing a bit of the other. Perhaps Jax and Ribbit were close friends, two who helped balance out each other's personalities. Both Yin and Yang represent certain qualities one might find in a person, and I feel that Yang represents Jax rather well, so it could be that Ribbit was more in line with Yin. Let's go over some of those qualities. Yin represents feminine energy, passivity, softness, the ability to yield and listen, as well as many other qualities. Yang, on the other hand, represents masculinity, activeness, hardness, assertiveness, and thinking. These traits all balance one another out and can be seen on both sides, but their core traits are more prominent. Something I didn't mention earlier is that their hands actually flash both colors, with both taking on the color black and white at one point. Jax embodies these traits of Yang rather well, at least in my opinion, but we can see glimpses of Yin's core traits in Jax in his softer moments. And to me, this is what the swapping colors symbolize. Jax can be vulnerable, but he actively chooses not to be. As I mentioned before, he is clearly someone who struggles with masculinity. Think back to episode 5 when Gangle and Zubul voted for him to be stuck wearing a maid outfit. Jax was outraged, not just by the demasculinization, but also at the lack of control over his life in that moment.
I don't want to wear this!
I have never seen you this upset about something.
One of Yang's core traits is assertiveness, which could be interpreted as control over a given situation. I believe that Jax may not have been so cruel in the past, with Ribbit being there to balance out his shenanigans and being the calm he needed to cope with his life here in the circus. But with Ribbit gone now, Jax finds himself giving into his worst impulses. Now, Jax and Kaufmo were also clearly somewhat close, given that Kaufmo was also in the Polaroid with Ribbit in him. I doubt Kaufmo would have hung out with the two of them if they were a chaotic duo, bullying the other members of the circus, as some fans have suggested. There was never any mention of him being a menace to anyone. Perhaps with the loss of Ribbit, Jax began lashing out, unable to cope with their abstraction, pushing Kaufmo away as well. Overall, I think Jax and Ribbit had a very close relationship. The two may have struggled with similar but contrasting insecurities, but brought out the best in one another. There was seemingly a fight between the two of them over their friendship, lightly brought on by Jax's own struggles with vulnerability. His need to bottle everything up and push others away could be what led to Ribbit's abstraction, causing Jax's current downhill spiral. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts and if you agree or disagree with anything I said, so please feel free to leave a comment. I wrote this all the way back when episode 7 came out, so sorry I didn't include that much about episode 8, but we honestly didn't learn that much new stuff about Ribbit, so it's okay. If you want to support the channel, consider liking and subscribing. Anyways, thank you all for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day or night, and if you're watching this just before bed, sleep tight. Bye!